Hi, my name is Rich. I'm trying to become the next governor of Washington State in November. Our country's internal politics were founded on persuasion, which is a really important aspect of how our society operates today. So here are 10 minutes to becoming more persuasive in your discussions concerning socialism. American ideals stand on the shoulders of those who fought bravely for freedom from oppression. Socialist ideals stand atop the towers of skulls of their political opponents. Cambodia, the USSR, Nazi Germany, China. I have seen the towers of skulls left as a monument to socialist horrors in Cambodia. And there are investigation records, museum narrations, and survivor interviews in every country around the world in which socialism has existed. There are 3 steps to socialism. First, consume the economic reward, which removes people's motivation and personal responsibility for providing for themselves. Next, force the people to meet government production goals. Here, coercion becomes the only means to influence citizens. And finally, kill your political opposition in order to retain power, which destroys about half the population. Throughout this process, "Be a good comrade" starts as a slogan, then transitions to a demand, and ends as a justification for punishment. To use the famous horse and carrot analogy, socialism begins by feeding the horse the carrot, which represents the wealth built up within the society. This carrot is not replaceable in a socialist economy, which eventually leads to every source of money running dry. The only remaining method to get the horse to work is to use the whip, via unjust imprisonments, labor camps, intentional famine, and other persecutions. Finally, when the horse has tired of the whipping, socialism kills the horse, including its political opposition, when necessary to maintain political power. As has been stated and established in literature, the ultimate goal of socialism is 1. A government that organizes the people for its own good, not the good of the people, and 2. A world without God, for faith is highly dangerous to socialist aims. Dostoevsky was one of the greatest novelists to ever live, and provides a harrowing description of Russia's transition to socialism. In all, the world's socialist governments have killed 150 million of their own people in the 100 years from the first Soviet communist regime in 1917 until today, and ruined the lives of many, many more. For reference, that would equate to the deaths of about half of all people in the United States today, given a population of 330 million. Socialism has failed in every country it has been tried, and often only after horrific despair, destruction, and violence. Socialists never set out nor intend to kill their own countrymen and destroy their own country. But as a structure of a socialist government increasingly finds itself unsustainable, they commit horrors to keep power. In Soviet Russia, they created the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, the USSR. During his time as leader, Stalin killed more than 20 million of his own Russian citizens, whom he deemed dangerous to the socialist movement. He killed so many people that he actually changed the gene pool of Russia, to where there are far fewer independent thinkers in the country today than there would normally have been, due to the fact that so many of them were purged and murdered. In some of the most fertile land in the world, in then Soviet Republic of Ukraine, the Soviets managed to kill 4 million Ukrainians in just one of their many inflicted famines, to where 1 in every 8 Ukrainians died of starvation, farmers dying of starvation. The Soviet socialist government had attempted to eliminate all private farms and then confiscated the entire agricultural yield, leaving the Ukrainian people that grew the food to starve to death. Russia and the former Soviet republics still struggle today with the after effects of socialism in economic and government oppressions. In China, the originator of socialism was Mao Zedong, referred to as Chairman Mao. He ended up creating the largest famine in human history, killing up to 45 million of his own people. How did it happen? The Chinese socialist government had made one very bad business decision by requiring all farmers to produce steel in their off time and to meet monthly production goals. When the farmers couldn't get their backyard smelters hot enough to produce quality steel, they melted down their own farm tools and implements in order to meet the required steel production amounts. When you include the number of political opponents that Mao killed in his Cultural Revolution, along with other anti-rightist campaigns, he totaled up to 75 million Chinese people killed, or 1 out of every 7 Chinese citizens. In 1992, China officially moved to a half socialist and half capitalist economy, and we have seen the Chinese economy and the Chinese people in general benefit greatly from the inclusion of some free market ideals. In Venezuela today, only 20 years of socialism has taken the country from the single most wealthy in Latin America, including all of South America and Central America, to one of the poorest, where citizens have to either wait in line for basic goods like diapers and medicine, or travel across their borders to obtain goods. Food production has fallen to 25% of what it was prior to socialism, because the government is running everything poorly. Hyperinflation has made Venezuelan money near worthless. The country has the world's largest oil reserves, the largest oil reserves in the entire world. But since their socialist government nationalized the oil facilities and replaced all 19,000 employees with Socialist Party members, their production is below half of what it was previously. Today, Venezuela lingers on the brink of collapse. In Cambodia, the socialist government run by a man named Pol Pot killed a third of the men in the entire country, 1 out of every 3 men, and 15% of the women, or 1 out of every 6 women. He filled mass graves with many of the 2 million people killed, and they now make towers out of the remains in these mass graves in an effort to never forget the socialist terror. Today, Cambodia benefits from a free market economy and is scrambling up a path of freedom and economic development. As well, I'll bet you didn't know that the word Nazi stands for National Socialist in the German language. It was a shortened form for the National German Socialist Workers' Party. The Nazi regime began as small-scale socialists in Germany, supporting union strikes. There are dozens more examples of these failures of socialism because it has failed everywhere it has gone. When you remove people's responsibility to take care of themselves and their family and place it in the hands of government officials, things do not go well. When people are told to satisfy their envy by taking from others, things do not go well. The people pushing socialism in the United States today use the very same words and the very same tactics that have been used throughout socialism's bloody history. How much death and destruction would a socialist chapter in America's future produce? Here is a bit of what the socialist states of America might look like. Life under a socialist government depends on who you know. Take a second to see if you know anyone influential in government. If not, you don't get to choose if your child attends school or where they attend, what job you have or where it is, what kind of place you live in or where you live. But if you know somebody, all of this is taken care of initially, regardless of whether you are a good or capable person, but simply because you know a high-ranking politician. In places like China, people cannot live in a city if they are categorized as a country person. They cannot live in a country if they are categorized as a city person, ever, for as long as they live. In an effort to eliminate personal failures, the socialist government also eliminates personal successes. It is the government that now either succeeds or fails. The government is now running the country like they own a business, and should they fail, when they fail, it is disastrous. We've even seen famines in the world's best farmlands. Either way, you now have politicians making your very large, very important business decisions in your place. As has been chanted by socialism since it began, socialists in the US have now begun repeating that very wealthy people should not exist, even though most of them started out with nothing. The socialists want to tell people like Michael Jordan and Oprah Winfrey that they should not exist financially. They want to tell the young people of our country that it's not worth developing your talents or intelligence because they're going to remove the monetary incentive to be the world's best basketball player or the world's best television host. They want to tell the young people working hard every day to improve themselves not to bother because they are going to remove every incentive. They are going to remove the differences between people, both good and bad. They don't want people who are very talented or very smart to become billionaires. They, in fact, want to replace those people with politicians. They want the political class, and only the socialists, to become the most successful people in the country, like in the case of every other socialist country that has ever existed. Venezuela, Cuba, North Korea. There are indeed billionaires in the socialist systems. It's the politicians. Just like Maduro is in Venezuela, Castro was in Cuba, Kim Jong-un in North Korea. Pick your favorite. Now I'm going to give you even more startling statistics, those from our own country, representing our own future. Are you ready? Recent studies have found that 40% of US college students prefer socialism over capitalism. They prefer the death and destruction of socialism over our free market economy and the economy of every free nation in the world. The same number view communism favorably. 40% of college students in our country view communism favorably. Why and how do we stop this? Even more have said that they would vote for a socialist. About 70% of the younger generation have said that they could see themselves voting for a socialist at some point in the future. There is both good and bad news from our colleges and universities, however. First, the bad news. In a study of 50 of the top colleges in the United States, about 80% of all their academic departments had zero or near zero Republicans, or any conservative voices. Our colleges and universities have no conservatives at all in the vast majority of their academic departments. However, the good news is that the research found that students spending more time in academic studies actually serves to moderate extreme political views such as socialism. Instead, most extreme political views are picked up via extracurricular student life or club settings. The more time university students spend away from academic studies and inside these student life settings, the more extreme their political views develop. More good news is that even though the research suggests a large segment of the US population either holds allegiance or openness to socialism, they don't actually really seem to understand the details or the death and destruction that they are supporting. The downside of this, of course, is that they are likely to vote for socialist politicians and policies anyway. There's a quote that states, "Every socialist is a disguised dictator." It was stated by someone called Ludwig von Mises a long time ago, when socialism was just beginning. But even back then, people could see the oppression of socialism. Can you not see this oppression in the socialist leaders in our country today? Do they not strike you as dictatorial, given their words and beliefs?